Tune in to Delta Flows on KXVS, the voice of Stockton, streaming live on Facebook and YouTube at KXVS Radio.
Hi everyone, this is Dr. Julie Damron, local veterinarian for over 20 years. I am so excited about my new radio show, Tales and Tips, on Tuesday morning at 10 a.m. on Facebook, YouTube, Voice of Stockton, and KXVS Radio. I will discuss relevant issues affecting animals and pet owners today, how to avoid common problems, and how to extend the quality of life for your cherished companions. As a community advocate, I will also discuss important social issues that affect our city. I plan to showcase organizations and heroes who are doing amazing things to help others. Remember to tune in every Tuesday morning at 10, starting soon.
KXVS LP Stockton.
This program does not reflect the views of KXVS management or KXVS, the voice of Stockton.
Good morning, Stocktonians, and welcome to another episode of Tales and Tips. I am privileged to have with me today Pat Withrow, who is running for the office of Sherriff. He is a retired sergeant from the San Joaquin Sheriff's Office. Welcome, Pat. So great to have you here today.
Thank you so much. It's my pleasure.
Let's start with how you started working for the Sheriff's Office, how many years you've been in law enforcement.
Yeah, so I started back in 1987. I was working at Lumberjack here in town, and a gentleman working for me, his father, was at the Sheriff's Office and told me they were hiring, so applied. So I was there for 28 years. Wow. And best job I ever had. It was a lot of fun, some sad times, but mostly a lot of fun and exciting. I did just about everything there. You know, you started off in the jail back in those days, and so I worked in the jail for 3 years, which was a great training ground for me as a young officer, and then was transferred to the streets and worked all the different beats in the street. Eventually, I applied for the Canine Unit and became a canine officer, and I was a canine officer for 12 years. I went through 2 canine partners, and they were fantastic, took really good care of me, and that was just the most fun ever on the department. I was also on SWAT for 5 years. Then after a while, and it got harder and harder to chase that dog around, I decided to promote up. So I promoted to sergeant and ran a patrol team and worked on a street crimes unit and a DEA drug task force. I was assigned down in our contract city down in Lathrop, so really got a taste of being a police officer as opposed to a deputy, which was really nice.
Gives you a different perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a really different job working in a city than running out around in the county. Although we have many pockets in the city too, but so that was a nice experience. Was sergeant over the detective division down there, also the administrative sergeant. Then eventually got transferred from there over to the alternative work program and community corps, and those were the ones where we would help low-level inmates who didn't need to be in custody but needed to serve their time, go on like home detention or work programs, so that they paid back to the community their debt to society and yet weren't taking up a bed space at the jail. And then community corps is the ones you see out along the freeway picking up their actual inmates, and they're picking up garbage and weeds and things like that, and ran that program and turned it around. So and then ran against the sheriff last time, and when you run against your boss, it's usually not a really good career choice. So after we came up about 8% short last time when we ran, I was transferred out of those programs and transferred into transportation in the jail. So I knew the career was over at that time, so retired a couple years ago, and now it gives me full time to be able to run for sheriff again. Excellent, excellent. And in a little bit, we'll talk about what motivates you to run for sheriff and kind of the changes that you'd like to see. But let's go back and touch on a couple things that you just mentioned. I know you and I talked at an event last week about the Canine Unit and how much that canine represents to the handler, and that it's more than just a dog, it's a partner. I'm going to let you talk about that. Yeah, absolutely. We all know how much we love our pets at home. They become family members, and We just love them to death. Well, you times that by about 10 when you have a canine partner that goes through the emotional ups and downs that we do in law enforcement, and I mean literally has made it where I got to go home to my family at night and other officers got to go home to their families at night because of the skill of the canines. You know, we spend 10 hours a day in a car, 4 days a week, and the bond that you form there is just amazing. But the canines as a tool in law enforcement, I believe, is one of the best tools that we can have. They use the skills that God gave them to make sure that we stay safe. They're able to find people when we can't find them and let us know they're there before we know it.
They can access areas you can't access.
Absolutely. I've put them up in attics, and I've put them underneath houses, and they've gone through pipes and down into levee waters, and they just go everywhere without any concern for their own safety. They do it out of the love of the job and the love of their pack. We kind of form our own pack there, and it's just amazing. Although it's hard. You can imagine with your own pet at home, if you had to send them into a dangerous situation, knowing that somebody in a house has a gun, and we try to do everything we can. We don't intentionally send them in if it's going to be risky, but unfortunately they are a tool as much as we love them, and it's much more important that the people get to go home to their families, and if that's what we have to do, then the dogs are willing to do it. So
and they're amazing. Also used for drug detection because their sense of smell is so much stronger.
Yeah, absolutely. Under this current sheriff, we lost that for a while. The drug detection out on the street. He has a couple in custody that search for drugs and cell phones. They are able to detect cell phones
and bombs.
Yeah. So there's all kinds of training that they do like that for the in custody dogs. I don't believe we have any left out on the street right now, but I would like to bring those back. We call them cross-trained dogs, so they're for apprehension and for dope or bomb detection. And in the way the world is today, we really need that.
We need that. Yeah. And I shared with you when I was working at Sierra Vet for 18 years, we were taking care of the Stockton PD Canine Unit. And it went from German Shepherds, and we had some Rottweilers, and then now it's predominantly Belgian Malinois,
right,
who are much more agile. They don't have the hip issues, and they can access areas that people just can't get to. They can scale walls quickly,
right,
and they're just such an asset. I think it's sad that the numbers of the canine unit when I was there dropped in half.
Right. Yeah, it's amazing. A lot of times people don't look at the big picture and see the cost savings that we have when you have an officer and a dog. It's like a two-man unit or even a three-man unit, because when a canine arrives on scene, a lot of time we can alleviate the use of force. My first dog was a German Shepherd, and they used to call me to do what they called bark buys. So if we had a large group of gang members or something like that, I could drive by and roll down my window and give him command, and he would just start barking, and that would capture people's attention and let them know, hey, this could escalate, or we can de-escalate this, and so they can really help it from getting out of control. If we show up at a scene with a dog and we bark outside the house and say, hey, come out, or we're going to send this dog in, 99% of the time those people decide to come out because they know the dog is going to come in and find them. And so anytime we can avoid using them, we want to, but sometimes some people just think they can take them on. So
and you can catch someone that's running also.
Absolutely. They're amazingly fast and agile, as you said, going up and over fences, and sometimes it's hard to keep up with them. Yeah, they're just a fantastic tool, and I was blessed to be able to work that division.
Awesome. Let's go back and talk about the programs where you've worked where people mainly maybe didn't need to be fully incarcerated. They had a lower level crime, and what difference you saw that you were able to make and maybe positive outcomes from those programs.
Yeah, it's an amazing program. As a peace officer out on the street, a lot of times we we would look at those programs as, oh, come on, we risked our lives to put these people in jail, and now you're just going to let them out. And that's kind of the attitude I went in with. But I also wanted to keep an open mind, saying, okay, let me learn about this program. And I found out what a benefit it is to our department. It's really been cut back since I've left. The numbers have dropped dramatically. But it's an amazing program because you have a lot of low-level offenders. Let's say they're drug offenders or drunk driving or just theft of property crimes or something like that, where they weren't violence against our citizens, that are taking up a jail bed space. And it costs a tremendous amount of money to house somebody every single day in custody. So the more we can open those spaces up for the really bad guys who really are out there trying to hurt our citizens, the better. So I took the program and I tried to advance it. We've got the where we put patches on them so we could tell if they were using drugs at all, that we would test regularly, and that helped people stay clean and sober while they were out. We had ankle bracelets that we put on them, not only for GPS tracking, but it would notify us immediately if somebody took a drink. So all those things really helped the inmate, be it male or female, to stay clean and sober. And I was amazed that later on in the program, after they've been on a while, many of them, when they came to the end of their program, asked if they could remain using the patch and remain with the alcohol detection, because it gave them the tool that they need to make sure that they didn't drink. And it made such a difference in the family. And it's funny, just recently on Facebook, I got a response from somebody that said, hey, yeah, I'm going to vote for you because you let me on the home detention program and it changed my life.
Wow.
And so it's a fantastic program. I really want to grow it back even more when we get out there, and free up those bed space for people that really want to hurt our citizens.
Well, and drug addiction and alcohol addiction is so pervasive through our community. I believe my husband, Bill Brown, is the past director for Gospel Center Rescue Mission, and both of those things are huge issues with how people end up homeless.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the more we can help them, the better.
Yeah, the thing, and I'm sure you know this through your husband, is what we're really missing now is a detox center, because to transition people from the homeless community and get them into temporary housing, they have to be clean and they have to be sober. We can't get them from the street and have them show up there drunk or loaded. So they won't take them. So if we can get some type of transitional housing like we used to have, where they have time to get clean and sober a little bit, and then get them into a place where they can have temporary housing and start getting their lives back together.
Well, and they need support. They need to relearn how to fit into society, and how to be able to be an active, participating citizen.
Yeah, absolutely. One of my things on my platform that I'm going to form when we get back in is what I'm going to call the HOT team. And it's I didn't make this up. I didn't reinvent the wheel. It's other places have teams like this, but it's homeless outreach team. So you have officers that are combined with social workers and mental health workers, and we'll reach out to the VA and get them involved. And we actually go out as officers, not to hassle people or find them breaking the law or anything like that, but to help them, start this transitional process.
We do have that somewhat now. Dennis Buettner does have a team that goes out, and there are mental health. I don't know how many sheriff and police are involved with that. I've been invited to go, and I just haven't had a chance. But I will say, as a member of the Homeless Task Force, I'm excited that so many communities are coming together to take homelessness as a serious issue. Right. We're implementing recommendations. I will say that one of the things that they want to implement, or that we've discussed, is housing first. And then having the wraparound services that go with it. I think our biggest issue is just not having enough low-income housing. Yeah,
absolutely. I noticed that our current sheriff has proposed putting some homeless people out at our honor farm, and I just think that's a disaster. If we introduce that element into our honor farm, and first of all, we're losing beds that we need for inmates that are victimizing our citizens. The other thing, it's way out in French camp. So the services are a long ways away. So we have transportation to deal with there and money to be spent on that. And the other thing is on the honor farm, I don't know if the sheriff realizes how the honor farm is built, but when they're out on their compound out there, when they're being housed there, they'll be just across the grass from the other inmates out on their compound. So we're just asking for problems of more contraband into our jail, which we already have a problem with. I think it's a safety risk for our correctional staff, because who knows? I mean, it's just a simple throw over a fence, a little 6-foot chain link fence to inmates. So there's got to be another solution as to where we can house these folks, not out at the honor farm.
And that's the first perspective that I've heard someone say that. So I'm glad that you brought that up. And I know there's issues with people escaping as well, and you hear the high frequency of escapes.
Yeah, that's another part of our platform is we've had 333 now escapes since we all saw that picture of that gentleman with the skull tattooed on his face that just escaped here in the country club area. And is still outstanding. So yeah, the high number of escapes has just been a problem for years. Last time I ran, I finally got the sheriff through public pressure to close the front gate, so they couldn't just run out and jump in a car there. And since we have AB 109 inmates now from the state that were supposed to be in state prison but are being housed locally, the type of inmate that we have at the honor farm anymore is not like it used to be. We used to have just low-level, non-violent, what we used to call Otis from the old days on Mayberry that would be the drunk that show up and then get to go home the next day. Well, we don't have Otis anymore. We have violent felons that are staying out there, and this sheriff should care about controlling that population and not letting them escape. If we're going to let them out on work crews, like I used to run the work crews, and they would run away from those all the time, just like this last one did, I have the answer for that. The answer for that is the GPS tracking bracelets that we have for putting on their legs when they go out. We have the kind that can't be cut or broken, and we just slap that on them when they leave and take it off them when they come back. That way we know if they take off running. The simple thing is we just look it up online and see where they're running and pick them up. So
how much are those bracelets?
They're very expensive. They're about $600, but when I left, we had about, I think, 50 or 75 of them. We already purchased them. So and they only have, I think, about 12 or 15 people on their home detention program right now.
So we could utilize the
We could absolutely use them. They're just sitting there. It's not an added expense, and I think it's something we should be doing.
That's an awesome tool that costs us nothing.
Yes, exactly. And we have to modernize our sheriff's office. That honor farm, it's been there since the 40s, and they don't have, at least last time I was out there, after I said this on the news, he was going to change this, but they don't even have motion lights on the fence. So the correctional officers don't even at night know if somebody gets near the fence, the light could come on. They don't. My closest friend has a camera next to his front door. So if somebody walks up to his front door, he sees us on his phone. We don't have any cameras on the fence line. We don't have any modern technology out there.
And those are not expensive things that you're talking about.
This is an easy fix. It's at low expense. The sheriff wants to spend $40 million on a whole new facility. And I say, look, sheriff, the jail shouldn't be a place that inmates want to come to or think it's not bad or it's comfy and fancy. I think a jail should be a jail. And we have buildings out there. I think we should utilize them for inmates, not homeless people. And I think we should upgrade the lighting and the cameras and just get in the modern age and secure that place. And then if we have to add more beds, we will. But our goal is not to have to add more beds. Our goal as a community should be to have less people going to jail. And we do that by getting more involved in our community. We start with the homeless, and we reach out in our schools. And the goal should be to have less and less people coming to our jail. The other problem out there is that we no longer have any type of training for inmates. Once they're in custody, we're not giving them the option to learn something so they don't have to go back out and be a bad guy again.
They need job training.
Yeah, we need to reach out to our local businesses and unions and start some apprentice programs in there and give them basic tools and skills that they need to get good paying jobs when they come out, where they can get benefits, and then they don't have to break into our cars. And it's as easy as teaching somebody how to frame a house or drive a forklift or wiring for electrical or roofing or whatever it is. We used to have a body shop, we used to have an upholstery shop, and people took advantage of that and came out and got good jobs. And if we expect to put bad guys into jail, let them sit there for a year, and then send them out the gate without any extra skills, then shame on us, because they're going to go back out and break into our cars again.
And they'll be right back out where they were. We also need to encourage employers to be willing to hire them once they come out and have these skills. I know that John Mendelson is starting a program called Ready to Work, and I do work with him on the Homeless Task Force. So they are starting to do some of what you're talking about,
I have
but
another,
it's slow going.
I have another friend, Gary Allegre, who owns a tanker wash over off of Charter Way, and he does the same thing. He had some challenges in his life and got past those, and now he's giving back to the community. He gives guys jobs, and people don't think about it, but they need the basic skills that they probably never taught by their families, as far as opening a checking account and how you even figure it out. Yeah, the life skills that they need, and that's what he helps them do when he hires them. He sets that type of stuff up for them. He shows them how they should budget their checks and things like that, and it makes a huge difference. So the more people in the community, like your friend and mine, that can reach out and do that, that's when we start lowering that population coming back to our jail.
Yes, and St. Mary's Dining Hall offers a lot of social services. They will help people get IDs. They do some of the life skills and some other supportive things.
Right.
And it's really needed. It's needed for the homeless population. It's needed for people that have come from criminal backgrounds, so that they can be reintegrated with society, because otherwise they're going to be right back where they started.
Exactly, yeah. And if we want to be smart with our budgets, money's tight for all cities and counties and everything like that. This is the smart thing to do. This is the smart investment to turn people's lives around, so they start contributing back into society, and we're spending less money on incarceration.
And why now do you want to run for sheriff? You're retired. You could be taking it easy, just enjoying. You could be fishing or whatever, hiking.
That kind of sounds like what my wife said. It's very true. I made this decision a few years back when I watched how our current sheriff was running our department, and basically running it into the ground. And of course, we've seen in light of events recently that there's a real problem there. And I could have done that. I could have stayed on the sidelines and sat and enjoyed my retirement and enjoyed camping with the family, but it was too important to stay on the sidelines. I was raised that if you're going to complain about something, you get in and do something about it. Make a difference. And I was blessed in my career that I had an opportunity to have a nice retirement, but I have to get back in there and try and fix the department I love. There's a reason that the people that work for this man has never endorsed him every time he's run for sheriff, and that's because of the way he treats people and the way he runs our department. And we're not able to get the job done on the streets anymore and protect our citizens and turn this thing around because of his job performance or lack thereof. Now, with the recent allegations of the criminal conduct that he's had, we really are at a turning point here in our community. And so, although I lost last time and only by 8%, and that was heartbreaking. It was devastating for our family, having never been involved in politics before. It was really hard, but we sat and we talked about it. And we said, hey, look, we have an obligation here to try and make a difference, and we have an obligation for the people who supported us last time and donated their hard-earned money, and we can make a difference in thousands of people's lives. And how often do you get to do that? So,
and not just those people, but the community as well, not just
Exactly.
people that enter the criminal
Absolutely,
system.
absolutely. I'm talking about getting back in our schools with school resource officers and helping children, not on an enforcement level, but to be there as a service level, to be there so kids know, hey, these are the good guys. These are the guys who are here to help me be safe and to reach out into the families. You know, I ran our school resource officers down in Lathrop, and you know, most of the time they would help us solve the crimes locally because they had such trust from the kids down there. The kids will come up to them and tell them what's going on in the community. So that's the way it should be all through this county. And when I say get back in the schools, I'm there to have our officers have such a bond with these kids that if there's a problem at home, they can come to us and say, hey, Dad lost his job. You know, do you know anything we can do? Or our water and electrical got turned off. Do you know people who we can reach out to? And that's what law enforcement and public safety and first responders, we're like the tip of the spear. We always see these things firsthand right away. And just because we show up at somebody's house, let's say on a domestic violence call or a burglary call or something like that, we're looking around and we're seeing that there's no water, there's no electricity, there's no food in the cupboards, those type of things. And we should immediately change our hat from law enforcement to the service side of law enforcement.
To supportive.
And we can be reaching out to these, we have all these churches and nonprofits and county and state organizations that are there that are already in place that want to help these people, but they don't know these families need it. So I really want our school resource officer program that has been diminished down to only 4 school resource officers for the entire county to be built back up so that we can then get the information that we find on a daily basis to the right place. So somebody comes and knocks on their door the next morning and say, hey, I heard your dad lost his job. Let's see if we can get him some retraining or find him new work. Or, hey, I hear that you don't have water and electricity. We have a program that can help you do that. So we really need to bring the service back into law enforcement. And don't mistake me. I'm a cop through and through, and between Canine and SWAT and patrol, you know, I've been in multiple shootings out on the street, unfortunately. But so I'm all about, we're going to go out there, and if bad guys think they can come to San Joaquin County, well, they're going to have something new in mind, because we are going to hunt you down and we will not let you hurt our citizens. But on the other side, if you're somebody who wants to get out of that lifestyle, we're going to be there to put that olive branch out to say, hey, look, if you want to change, we're willing to help you. And if you fall off that wagon or whatever it is, then we'll offer that olive branch again, and we'll say, hey, we'll give you another chance, and we'll give you another chance. We will continue to protect our citizens aggressively, but we will also continue to aggressively try and help people get out of that lifestyle.
And reestablishing trust is critical. I mean, we have so many unsolved crimes in the city of Stockton, and people are afraid to come forward and say what they know because they think they're going to be hurt.
Yeah, absolutely. You know what? I got endorsed by the Stockton Police Department. I was honored to have that, as well as the Lodi Police Department and Tracy, and honored to have those. But you know, it was interesting when I was speaking in front of their association about an endorsement. The first question out of their mouth was, "Hey, where's the sheriff's office? They used to be here to work with us and help us, and they're not around anymore. What's going on?" And I said, "Well, you guys are in a war, and our sheriff has made the sheriff's department Switzerland. He's just not getting involved because getting involved costs money and can lose votes. And we can't have a department run by a politician that's only concern is himself. We need a guy who cares about the community and is willing to get involved no matter what it costs or what we have to do to make sure our citizens stay safe. And we have to combine all the law enforcement agencies together, sharing information and helping each other out with the budget woes that we have as far as staffing and things like that. We just need to work together.
You work together, you maximize resources.
Absolutely. You throw a net over this whole county and make sure that each city and each agency works together to make sure we have what we need to make it safe.
And we haven't touched on gangs yet. Gangs is such a huge issue, especially throughout Stockton. We've got 3rd and 4th generation gang members.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a horrible problem, but again, it's not a problem that that we can't fix. I believe getting back in our schools is a huge difference in that. If you catch the kids young and give them alternatives to if their family, a lot of this stems from families that both parents have to go and work and children are home alone and
Latchkey kids.
Exactly. So if we give them programs to go out and do after school and not hang out on the corner and not get sucked in by the gangs. We used to do this at the sheriff's office. It's all been eliminated by the sheriff. But back then we had a great outreach program where officers would volunteer their time. It didn't cost the department anything. They didn't have to pay overtime or anything like that. Cops want to go out there and help. So they would open up the gyms at schools throughout the community, and kids would show up, and the officers would play either basketball or football or whatever with them and get involved. So it was fun for the kids because they got to see cops as just normal people.
And it's more community outreach, more establishing trust.
Absolutely. And they get to see, hey, that guy's not such a bad guy. So then when we do put the uniform back on and we show up in the neighborhood, something's going down. Now you start to get the response of, hey, that guy's not so bad. I played basketball with him last weekend. And we get the information that we need, and we can start helping people. The other thing was, back when we did that, we went 2 years without a gang homicide when we opened up these things and had alternatives for people to do. So you talk about investing money. You know, the cities and the counties have to invest in these type of programs that eventually saves you money by doing it. So you can make a big difference in the gang program as long as you're willing to do the outreach needed to go out there and find these guys and find what you have to do to give them the alternative to hanging out with gangs.
Excellent. On one of your informational pieces online, I found you discussing modular buildings,
right.
So that if there are people, if we need to increase the capacity of the jail or services, that we could offer that.
Right. Last time when I ran, the sheriff again was talking about building this, I think it was an $80 million jail facility at that time, and all these new big fancy buildings he wanted to build, and I offered up, I said, hey, you know, the state prisons build these modular buildings. They're inexpensive. Inmates build them themselves. We could just buy what we needed.
You could get skills building them too.
Absolutely. You just buy what you need or have them built on site there and place them out at the Honor Farm. They're secure. They can be used to house inmates, but the neat thing about it is if you're doing the job right, as we just talked about, and those numbers start to drop as the number of inmates that come into our jail, then you're not stuck with a 30, 40, $80 million facility. You have these modulars that then can transition from jail beds to training pods, where now we're doing even more.
Computer skills.
Exactly. Computer skills, anything like that, culinary skills, things like that, so that people can get a job. So we don't need these permanent hard cells that are going to be there forever, that kind of give you the incentive. Well, if we got it, we're going to better fill it. No, we have to have the other attitude as, hey, we've got these. We get to transition another one back to a classroom where we're helping people.
That's amazing. All right, so now I'm going to ask you the tough question about issues that are going on right now in the coroner's office. Do you think that the coroner's office should be part of the sheriff's office?
Absolutely not anymore. The current sheriff has broken the trust of the public with his criminal behavior. I believe the Attorney General should come in immediately and start an outside independent investigation into the allegations that have been made against this sheriff. It is clear by what we're seeing coming from Dr. Amalo and Dr. Parsons, who had the courage to stand up and say this is wrong, that everybody's worst fear has come true. We have a sheriff that has been tampering with the findings of the coroner's division and making things that appear that they should have been labeled as either homicides or criminal behavior to something as low as an accident. And the trust has been betrayed. At no time now will the public believe what's coming out of our department, our coroner's division, unless it's separated from the sheriff's office and an independent medical examiner / coroner's department is formed. Therefore, the coroners would work without undue influence by the office, any of the offices, and their decisions would go forward. And then our DA would have the tools that they need to look at all the evidence, whatever comes from the forensic pathologist, and then the preponderance of the rest of the evidence that comes from the case, to make a proper decision as to whether to charge some type of criminal behavior or whether, it was a justifiable type of use of force.
And I believe that that's being brought up this morning, right now, at the County Board of Supervisors meeting.
I hear that they're going to be discussing that this morning. I last week put out a press release stating that I believe that they should be separated immediately. There's been, I believe, like 17 other counties in the state that have done this, and I just believe the sheriff has betrayed the trust of our citizens, violated the law. Clearly he has obstructed justice by not giving all the information needed to the coroners so that they could make a legitimate finding. He's clearly signed death certificates that were knowingly false, which is a felony in the state of California for signing any type of public document like that with a knowingly false statement. So I call for our district attorney and our elected officials, the Board of Supervisors, to reach out to the Attorney General's office and say, look, in just the past year alone, this sheriff has been called dishonest and a liar by two separate people. One was a federal judge up in Sacramento that is hearing a $25 million lawsuit right now having to do with the Sherriff serial killer case. And the judge came out publicly, we saw it in the Stockton record, and said, look, the sheriff was less than honest in his statement, and I don't believe him. And that was in under perjury that the sheriff made that testimony. The second time was by the world famous Dr. Amalo. I mean, this man, the NFL came after him. I'm sure they crawled up inside his life to find any type of breach of integrity, and they could find nothing. And so we have a federal judge and Dr. Amalo both stating how this man behaves. And clearly, they don't get any more honest than those two folks right there. So I believe the Attorney General should step in here. That's just in the past year. In the past 4 years or so, or even longer, the sheriff was accused of mishandling the Sherriff serial killer, the most prolific serial killers in our nation. And this sheriff said that he didn't want to be around the case, and how the families were treated there just fell on deaf ears at that time. And then he was accused of stealing guns out of the evidence room, where our own DA did an investigation and came out and said, yeah, he did it, but we're not going to charge any crimes or anything like that. Then we have and that fell on deaf ears. And then we had 10,000 missing pieces of evidence that this sheriff was accused of. And at that time he said, no, there's nothing wrong with our evidence room. And yet if you look at his budget right now that he submitted to the County Board of Supervisors, he's asking for $750,000 to fix the evidence room that he said there was nothing wrong with. So that fell on deaf ears. When the grand jury went to looking, they allowed the sheriff to do an investigation into himself to see if there was 10,000 missing pieces of evidence. And now we have the coroner's division. So clearly we have a sheriff that is not doing his job. It is failing, and we need somebody to come in to do a independent investigation. It is not fair to ask our DA, Tori Verber, who has to work closely with all these law enforcement agencies, including the forensic pathologist, to do an investigation into this. It's just not fair. They need independent eyes on that so that they can come out with the proper decision, whether he's found innocent or not. And he deserves that. He deserves this independent investigation.
And unbiased, yes.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's so sad to see this happening at my department, but it just makes my will even stronger to work hard and get in there and make a change.
Well, and going back to the coroner's office, it's surprising to me that in so many communities throughout California and throughout our nation that it was set up like that, because I don't understand how someone that hasn't trained their whole life to have a medical background can have the ultimate decision. That doesn't make sense to me. And then it also doesn't make sense that you've got someone doing that who is naturally going to protect the people that work for him. I mean, that's just inherent with how people are.
It was a program that was set up clearly for convenience for small towns and cities that, don't have much crime and would rarely have a homicide or anything like that, where they would just have probably a natural death or an accidental death that somebody, any private citizen, could be assigned as the coroner that would go out and rule on that and help distribute the family's property and things like that. But you notice in the big cities like Sacramento and LA, where we do have a lot of crime and a lot of violent deaths, that they've gone to this medical examiner platform, and clearly San Joaquin County has come to that point, and unfortunately I think it probably could have run smoothly had we had a sheriff that would have listened to the professionals, the doctors, and taken their advice, but he had his own agenda, and when you get that type of corruption and dishonesty in office, then you have to make a change, because you will not win back the trust of the citizens without making a change.
Well, and I think that's sadly true, and I was happy to hear that it is being brought before the County Board of Supervisors, because that way it can happen as soon as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. I believe the public has to reach out and tell the County Board of Supervisors what they want, the Board of Supervisors to do, because as we know, there are close political relationships throughout the board, and this clearly opens up unfortunately, the San Joaquin County to probably a lot of litigation that could cost our taxpayers a lot of money on lawsuits, and so we don't want that to influence their decision. We want their decision to be based on facts, on what's best for the county. That's what we hired them to do. And I'm sure they will make that decision based on that. But we want to make sure that, as we see all over the nation, that we have to keep an eye on our elected officials. And hopefully that'll be me included after June.
There should be checks and balances.
Absolutely. We should be held accountable, and but they can't read your mind. So unless you reach out and make your desires known, we could continue on with a good old boy type of network around here. Yeah, so we need to make sure that our voices are heard.
Definitely. In closing, is there anything else that you'd like to talk about or add?
Well, I'd just like to say, it's really been such a learning experience going through this and learning about politics and stuff. It's been very difficult on us, and yet so rewarding. We've met so many neat people going through this process, and in law enforcement, a lot of times we try and keep our lives real private and secure, but it's been so good for me to be able to get out and meet so many neat people. We have this fantastic community, this jewel of a community here right in the center of California. It should be a destination for people. They should want to come here, bring their families, live here, vacation here, because you're an hour and a half from the city, you're an hour and a half from the mountains, from Tahoe. We've got all the freeways and networking you need. Businesses should want to come here. We've got the Port of Stockton. That's this amazing thing, and yet we don't have it because people aren't willing to get control of the crime and the bad stuff that is constantly in the news about Stockton. So I look forward to working closely with all our law enforcement agencies and our community service agencies here in San Joaquin County to immediately turn this around. We can make an immediate difference. This isn't rocket science. We all have the answers. We just need to put it into motion and make sure that our only goal is what's best for our citizens and our community.
And that would be amazing to see those positive changes. And that's part of why I do this radio show on the Voice of Stockton. The Voice of Stockton is really a tool to help the community and just highlight amazing things that are going on. We have a lot of wonderful organizations and people right here, and all you hear is the negative.
Right, and it's amazing that you're willing to do this for our community. I know you're busy as a doctor and working your buns off there, but I people around me say you need to be as visible as the doctor out in the public, because she is involved in everything, and she's making such a difference in our community, and we thank you so much for that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I just want to give a shout out to Dr. Fry at Stockton Veterinary Emergency and Specialty Center, and I'm going to sign off. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you.
Make it a great day.